Hi, and welcome to the first lecture and discussion we're doing on the rhythm unit. So I wanted to start, before we back up and do some terms and definitions, I just wanted to pick up on a piece of music that we've already listened to, the prelude from Bach's first suite for solo cello in G major. By the way, that's a mouthful, but that's the way you refer to that specific piece that we listened to. There are actually, give or take, 30 more of those varying lengths of solo cello pieces, which I would highly advise digging into because there are some real gems in there. But we're going to listen to that prelude again. What we're going to do is we're actually going to learn a conducting pattern, the pattern that the person holding the baton would actually use, because it's also a really valuable way to learn how to participate with what you're hearing, right? You can tap your foot to some music, but some music is not foot tapping music, right? And you actually might notice in some cases that um, musicians will actually conduct when they're listening to music, and that's one way for them to kind of connect with it. So we're going to do just a basic 4/4 pattern. The different meters have different points in space where they come to rest. And so what I thought I would do is I'll go through the 4/4 pattern, and then we're going to conduct while we listen to the G major prelude so that you get a sense of where things are. All right. And I'll put a timestamp in the video description so you can do part of it and then you move on, or you can do the whole thing, because there are some times where the tempo stretches and pushes ahead and pulls back, and so that's where you have to make some adjustments to your movement. Just like if you're in a piece of choreography, if you are early, one of the things that will help prevent you from being early is making a bigger movement. Same exact thing with the conducting pattern. I'm going to try and stay in the frame though here. So for our 4-beat pattern, we start with the down beat, which is down. So this is beat 1. I'm going to try and put it right in that, like right in front of my sternum, right there. So 1. No matter what meter you're in, 1, 2, oh, 1's not a meter really. 2, 3, 4, 5. No matter what, 1 is here. This is home, right? And this is kind of like I'm telling you that this is where all the beats are going to be as well. My hand passes through this point right here. So it's 1, 2. So you move over to cross your body. 1, 2, out, away from your center. Stay in the frame here. I'm using my baton to try and stay visual because I know the lighting behind me is a little weird, even though I have a ginormous bright light shining in my face as well right now. I'm using this baton and wearing a black shirt so that with the hopes that you can see me. It's the same reason conductors use a baton in general, is for visibility. They don't have to. So you can hold a pencil, right? I just happen to have a nice orange and white pen right here. You can use a pencil or a pen to do this. Actually, this stays in frame very nicely. So I'll try it a little bit more with a baton, but I might switch back to that pen. That's pretty good. So down, in, out, up. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, and there's a little weight to each beat. 1, and again, it's right there. 2, in across your body. 3, out to the side. 4, upbeat, downbeat, right? So this is sometimes when you hear these terms, it's coming actually from the conducting pattern that people used and have been using this pattern for a long time. Although I'm not exactly sure how many years it's been going on. A couple centuries safely, we can say. I don't know the exactly when this pattern came about, but it's been in use. I've never seen anybody do anything else um, uh, historically. Anyway, so we're going to listen to the Bach G major prelude. Now, in order to keep away from the YouTube copyright bots that will strike me down for playing a copyrighted recording, I'm actually using a recording of me playing this. So it's not on cello, it's on marimba. Um, So if you like it, great. If you don't like it, I'm sorry. But either way, it's the same notes. And it might be interesting to hear a different instrument play the same familiar tune, waking the player up. All right. So let's go for it. Let's record all the way through, or conduct all the way through. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Sometimes, if you want to indicate quiet, you can make your pattern smaller. And if you want louder, make it bigger.
It's 1 o'clock.
3, 4, and down, in, out, up. And if you wanted to show more lyricism, you can actually just use your hand by itself. 1, 2, 4. Now there's a moment where it starts to get a little bit more stretchy time-wise. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. This is what's called rubato, which we're going to talk about. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. I actually got off by a beat there, which is unusual because that's me playing there towards the end. Now, one thing you can also do to keep your place along with this is something actually I should I'll put in the description as well, so that you can look for ahead of time, or if you want to go back and do that again and conduct while you're looking at the music. So you guys have had enough time looking at music, so you can look at something and, for example, identify. And you can look in the Moodle page right now, and you'll see it that this is entirely, or almost entirely, with, I believe, 2 exceptions, it is entirely 16th notes. 2 exceptions, and then the last note. Everything is a 16th note in this. And so what you can do is you can follow not only the number of notes to keep your place in terms of where in the meter you are, but you can also follow the shape of the line. You know, when it's coming up, when it's coming down, those sorts of things. One of the interesting and valuable things about this, doing it this way, is that you can stay on track with it. And you can also, it helps you be more specific about, like, let's say you have a couple different recordings of something, and you want to figure out why you like one versus the other. Well, having the music in front of you might actually be helpful in that way, because you can point to a specific spot and go, wait a second, that was stretchy in one place and it wasn't in another. So, I mean, but ask it. So here's our question, first big question. Does, for you, once you follow along in the score, help you notice more about the music? I'm hoping so, but if so, what? What do you notice If you're following along in the written music, which I have posted right here, that's what I'm pointing to. In the written music, what do you have that is what do you have that is what do you notice that you didn't before? And for that matter, I have also posted the music, the score, the first page of the score for Music for Pieces of Wood by Steve Reich, and you can see exactly how those little displaced rhythms and the consistent, insistent quarter note rhythm, you can see how they mesh against each other. And so, again, does seeing that make you think of it differently? Does it help you make more sense of things and keep your place? And likewise, I've also put a small score sample of Sleep by Eric Whitacre up. And so so in that case, there's text that you can also make out, but you can literally see just by glancing at the page, even if you knew nothing about music, you can see it's a qualitative difference for all of those things. Everything you can notice that the activity on the page is different, and therefore you can expect a different level of activity in the rhythm, right? And that's what we're talking about here. So rhythm, rhythm, rhythm. What does that word mean? Three main ingredients, right? Just like before we defined music and we had four main ingredients in it. Rhythm has three main ingredients. So this is where you want to, take note in a different way. We're defining things now. Well, the lights really shifted around behind me. Rhythm is patterns of sound in time, right? So patterns, again, something that can be isolated and duplicated, something that generates expectation, right? If I do, right, there's creating an expectation of playing at the end of that. Sound, again, because we're doing with musical rhythm. Other things can have rhythm as well. And in time. So I've heard it very interestingly put that, to think of it in spatial terms, to make an analogy, keeping time as a musician is like imagine you're the engineer of a train, and you constantly have to lay out an exact amount of track in front of you that you're rolling in, and you have to be very precise with how much track you're putting. It's a way to cover distance. In that case, it's spatially, but in this case, it's time. I have to think of a period of time, and then I have to divide it up in a way where things feel settled and comfortable. Timekeeping, basically, being a clock. What is its function? Well, it animates music. There is an interesting aspect of the song. If anybody knows the song 96,000 from In the Heights, there's a part in the song where we have we have literally three different tempos of vocals going on at the same time. And so it helps to animate each of those parts, and it helps to structure and organize things. Animate, structure, organize, so that everything you're able to keep track of. In this case, the text is also helpful, but everything that you're hearing is organized in such a way because of the rhythm. It allows windows of opportunity for you to perceive things. So what's some evidence of audible rhythm in daily life? So patterns of sound in time. The classic for me, just the one that my mind gravitates towards, is you have a pair of jeans in the dryer, and you hear the button click against the side of the inside shell of that. There is the dripping of water. That is kind of an incidental thing. where it can create an expectation. When's that next drop going to happen? There is things that are more gentle. You have the rhythm of waves on a beach, right? That's slow, but it's still a pattern of sound and time. And you can kind of, set your watch by them if your watch is being set in longer chunks of time, right? When we talk about teaching rhythm and music in Western culture, so here's another question for you. Western culture these days starts by teaching people music in 4/4. Wonder I wonder why is that? Why is that? What makes 4/4 the time signature or the meter or the setting that helps to bring people into music? And that's another question to consider. And in my case, I have opinions about it, but I actually want you to think about that before we talk next, as a question to consider. Interestingly enough, in older music, especially when you look at the Catholic Church, older music tended to be in three. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, some sort of three, or some sort of nine. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Can you think why the Catholic Church may have been interested to, or may have favored, rather, music that had more threes based in them, right? What's the symbolism there? I'm going to try and get closer. Hopefully my mic is getting picked up nicely. What is the symbolism there? Well, it's the Trinity. The Trinity of Trinities. So 9 actually used to be considered common time, which now 4/4 is considered common time, just for comparison. When you have music that is traditionally being danced to, now we're talking popular culture dancing, not necessarily concert dance or some of the more artistic pursuits that you are encountering in your academic work right now, and in your artistic work at school. But when you have traditional dance music, they tend to have a very strong perceptible beat, right? And if you think about that, well, if it's music for everybody, we want to make sure that the beat is clear enough, right? We have even, going back to disco music, any kind of EDM music, anything with that sort of thing. Well, you can say what you want about it, but it's not hard to find where the beat is, right? But even in more traditional ballet settings, it's not an elusive setting. Think about what you use for what you hear as accompaniment in your ballet technique classes. It's generally supposed to be pretty clear, whereas the beat and the time can be a little bit more dissolved as you venture into more contemporary and modern genres. Do you always want that for your choreography? Do you always want, if let's say you're selecting music for choreography, do you want that? Well, clearly not, right? The issue then becomes, well, is it all or nothing? Is it, I either have a very clear beat of 4/4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Everything is in stark contrast, and you can pick up things pretty simply, pretty easily. Or do you want things to be a wash of sound where there are no lines, and it's like an impressionist painting where all the I was about to say flavors, all the colors bleed into each other, right? Or is there something in between where rhythm can be a little bit more elusive? Absolutely, there is. That's the music that is going to end up being some of the most rewarding music after multiple listenings, We're going to listen to more of that music as we go on in this unit. I wanted to define a term that gets used a lot, and it doesn't bother me anymore, but it used to bother me because I didn't have a good, solid personal definition for it. I couldn't exactly tell you what the word groove meant. The word groove used to bother me. And I thought it was kind of used as a like, hey, groove it, man. It like kind of like a catch-all term that people used when they didn't know what else to say, but they, wanted to complement the music, sort of thing. But then I thought about it, and okay, well, first of all, part of the term comes from old-fashioned LP vinyl record players where the needle was in the groove. And if you guys have ever used a record player, one of the issues with them, this is from when I was a real little kid, but in some ways they've come back a little bit in case you guys have some experience with them. But one of the things that was an issue is the needle would skip. You've heard that sound, but that's what created it. So the needle being in the groove was a good thing. It meant that you could keep hearing and trusting what you were going to hear. I'm putting it into my own terms now. And then if the needle was out of the groove, that was not an enjoyable listening experience. And when you're listening to any kind of music, especially music that creates a rhythmic expectation, you want to be able to trust where that groove is going to be, where that beat is going to be. So I'll use an example that might hit home. You may have at some point in your experience either worked with an accompanist or a teacher or performed along with live musicians where the timing wasn't predictable. And obviously, you need to do very intricate things within the timing if you want to be precise and comfortable at the same time. And that lack of stability is the lack of grooves. The groove basically means a musical sort of trust that you can settle back and you can hear where things are and it will feel good. It doesn't necessarily mean obvious, right? And this is also, groove is not something that is unique to popular music or music with drums, in the drum set, drums, bass, piano, guitar settings. We're going to listen to the piece Bolero. Ravel's Bolero is an orchestra piece. And that there is a groove to that, right? There's a certain sort of trust that the whole orchestra has to have with the snare drummer as the drummer's playing that. What are some common rhythmic mistakes that you might end up hearing? So this is another question to think about. What are some common rhythmic mistakes? Okay. Well, and we're going to talk about tempo and what tempos are comfortable in a moment. And we'll start with what is, I'm going to play my metronome. Shame. I have my metronome over here. There it is, right behind the computer where it should be. Okay, sorry about that. So I have my metronome. Didn't want to use my phone. I don't trust that connection at the moment. I'm going to play a tempo. Most people would agree that this tempo, which is 80 beats per minute, they would not call it fast. They would not call it slow, right? It's kind of in this Goldilocks zone. It's just right. before we start to do anything with the tempo, we can say basically that's a, moderate tempo. So common mistakes that you hear. This is a biggie, but I want you to think this is another question that I want you to think about. Common mistakes. Well, one big one is as we get farther from that tempo setting in either direction, the musician or the performer, in whichever case you are, if the less disciplined they are, the more likely they're going to want to gravitate back towards that Goldilocks tempo, right? So it's not just that it's easy to slow down fast tempos. It's also easy to speed up slow tempos, right? And there's actually I'm going to put forth an idea in a moment about why it is this particular neighborhood of tempo ranges, 80, right? So that's a common rhythmic mistake that can basically groove. It kills a groove. It kills your trust, right? Because if you're listening to something, you want reassurance. And again, I'm talking about in general. You want reassurance. And if you're in a group of people where they all have different ideas of where the beat is, that is a surefire way to not trust what you're hearing. So now, once you trust it, then that's what makes you like it. That's part of what makes you like a rhythm. So my challenge to you, see if on your own, in your own thoughts, you can use this groove concept in context. So you're listening to something, and you kind of like, you find yourself bobbing your head to it, tapping your foot, wanting to move a little bit more to it. Well, you could say, okay, that's got a good groove. It pulled me in, right? You're in the groove there. Or if you hear a great accompanist in class, something like that, and you really like that they just lay things down very steadily, you can tell them that you like their groove. And it doesn't matter if you're talking to a drummer or a pianist, right? If they're at all aware of what their job is, which of course they are, because that's what they're doing, their job, they'll know that you're paying them a very high compliment. It's nice to be paid attention to. If we start to try and define why things are catchy or infectious, we start to get into this issue of like over defining the good thing, and you end up kind of spoiling it. But if we talk about groove and trust together, those are good things. Those are good concepts that go hand in hand. Okay, some terms to define here. Tempo. Speed of the music, how quickly or slowly the music is being performed. But this refers to the pulse rate of the performance, like the tempo that you tap your foot at, and not the density of notes. So I'm going to show you an example of what that means here. So I'm going to put this 80 beats per minute back on. Now that's quarter notes. That's, we're going to call that quarter notes. And by the way, 80 beats per minute. It's not beats per measure. Sometimes people mix up the terminology for tempo and heart rate. By the way, beats per minute, both measured in BPM, with the terminology associated with meter, time signature, beats per measure, beats per minute. Right. Think of this as an adjustable clock. Right. I don't want 60 seconds per minute. I want 61 seconds per minute. You can do that with a metronome. So the difference between tempo and rhythm has to do with activity, right? So within this 80 beats per minute, I can have quarter notes, or I can add eighth notes. The tempo hasn't changed, I can go to 16th notes. Again, same tempo. I can go to triplets. Tempo has not changed, right? So tempo is a little bit above the fray, right? Think about it. There can be a lot of dynamic change happening, but tempo very rarely changes in actuality. It's more what we're doing with the tempo. So sometimes when people refer to a tempo change, they're not referring to a tempo change. They might be referring to a feel change. Like, I used to be feeling all the beats, and now I'm feeling half of the beats, or now I'm feeling twice as many, or I'm hearing twice as many. That's very often. It's a little better to look for ways to assess things according to a common tempo. Now, there are several standard terms that refer to tempos that are all in the Italian language. So just like ballet, a primary language of dance in general stems out of ballet, which so and therefore you have French terms being used more so around the world than terms from any other language. For music, our terminology comes from Italy. It has to do with the popularity of 17th century Italian opera, and how much music